Sometimes the child everyone overlooks is the one carrying the heaviest wish. Snow drifted gently through the streets of downtown Chicago, turning the city into a painting of white rooftops, glowing streetlights, and sparkling Christmas decorations. Holiday music floated through the air as families gathered inside the Jefferson Community Center for the annual Christmas gift drive, one of the largest charitable events in the city. Hundreds of children filled the auditorium. Brightly wrapped presents were stacked beneath enormous Christmas trees. Volunteers dressed in red sweaters moved through the crowd distributing hot chocolate and candy canes. Laughter echoed from every corner of the room. It was the kind of scene that appeared in holiday advertisements and heartwarming news segments. Benjamin Carter stood near the main stage, greeting organizers and donors. At 46 years old, he was one of the most successful businessmen in America. His company employed thousands of people across the country. Newspapers frequently described him as a visionary entrepreneur. Yet despite the attention and success, Benjamin often found holiday events difficult. Christmas had not felt the same since losing his wife several years earlier. He continued supporting charitable causes because he believed in helping others, but some part of his own heart still felt strangely empty. As photographers captured images of smiling children opening gifts, Benjamin politely posed for a few pictures before stepping away from the crowd. That was when he noticed her. Near the far corner of the auditorium, beneath a string of white Christmas lights, sat a young black girl wearing a navy winter coat and knitted gloves. She looked no older than 10. Unlike every other child in the room, she was not standing in line for presents. She was not laughing with friends. She was not rushing toward the Christmas tree. She simply sat quietly in a folding chair, watching everyone else. Benjamin glanced around. Maybe she was waiting for someone. Perhaps a volunteer had asked her to stay seated. Yet several minutes passed and nothing changed. Children raced past her carrying giant boxes wrapped in colorful paper. She barely seemed to notice. Her attention remained fixed on the twinkling lights hanging above the stage. A volunteer approached and offered her a gift bag. The girl thanked her politely but set it beside her chair without opening it. That caught Benjamin's attention immediately. Most children could hardly wait 5 seconds before tearing through wrapping paper. This child had not even looked inside. Across the room, the celebration continued. Applause erupted as another group of children received presents. Holiday music grew louder. Yet Benjamin found himself looking back toward the girl again and again. Something about her quiet presence stood apart from everything around her. It was not sadness exactly. It was something deeper. The expression of someone who had learned not to expect too much. Rebecca Lawson, the event coordinator, walked past carrying a clipboard. Benjamin stopped her gently. "Who is that little girl?" he asked. Rebecca followed his gaze toward the corner of the room. Her smile softened immediately. "Her name is Aaliyah Brooks," she said quietly. Benjamin looked back toward the child. Aaliyah still sat alone beneath the Christmas lights while the celebration unfolded around her. And without fully understanding why, he suddenly knew one thing for certain. Before the day ended, he needed to find out why she was the only child in the room who was not opening her presents. For the next 30 minutes, Benjamin tried to focus on the event. Children lined up for photographs with Santa Claus. Volunteers distributed winter coats and gift certificates. Local reporters interviewed sponsors near the stage. Everything unfolded exactly as planned. Yet no matter where he stood in the crowded auditorium, his eyes kept returning to the same corner. Aaliyah remained in her chair beneath the Christmas lights. The unopened gift bag still rested beside her feet. Occasionally she smiled politely when someone spoke to her, but the smile never lasted long. It seemed less like happiness and more like kindness offered to make other people comfortable. Finally, Benjamin approached Rebecca again. "Does she have family coming?" he asked. Rebecca's expression softened. "No." Benjamin waited. "She has been in foster care for several years," Rebecca explained quietly. "She has moved between multiple homes. She is a wonderful child. Smart. Respectful. She just learned a long time ago not to expect much." Benjamin looked toward the little girl. Something about those words stayed with him. Not to expect much. The sentence felt far too heavy for a child her age. Across the room, a group of children erupted into laughter after opening toys and games. Their excitement filled the auditorium with energy. Yet Aaliyah simply watched. Not with jealousy. Not with sadness. Almost as if she had already accepted that whatever everyone else was celebrating belonged to a different world. Benjamin thanked Rebecca and slowly walked toward the corner. As he approached, he noticed details he had missed earlier. Aaliyah's gloves were worn at the fingertips. Her winter coat was clean but clearly several years old. Her posture remained calm and composed. There was maturity in her eyes that did not belong to a 10-year-old. "Mind if I sit here?" Benjamin asked. Aaliyah looked up and immediately recognized him. Most people in the room would have been intimidated. She simply nodded. "Okay." Benjamin pulled a chair nearby. For a moment neither spoke. Holiday music drifted softly through the auditorium, while snow continued falling beyond the windows. "You are missing all the excitement," Benjamin said with a small smile. Aaliyah glanced toward the crowd. "Not really. No." She shook her head. "I can see it from here." Benjamin found himself smiling. Her answer was honest without being rude. "I noticed you have not opened your gift." Aaliyah looked down at the colorful bag beside her chair. "I will later." "Most kids cannot wait that long." A faint smile appeared. "Most kids are probably smarter than me." Benjamin laughed softly. It was the first genuine joke he had heard from her. The conversation paused again. Strangely, the silence felt comfortable. Finally Benjamin asked, "Do you like Christmas?" Aaliyah looked toward the giant tree standing near the stage. Thousands of white lights reflected in her eyes. "I like the lights." "Just the lights." She thought carefully before answering. "The lights always come back every year." Something about the way she said it made Benjamin's chest tighten. It sounded less like an observation and more like a reason. Before he could ask another question, a volunteer announced the beginning of a special presentation. Applause filled the room. Children hurried toward the stage. Aaliyah remained seated. Benjamin stood slowly. For reasons he could not fully explain, walking away suddenly felt difficult. He glanced back one last time. The little girl sat beneath the Christmas lights exactly where he had found her. And for the first time in years, Benjamin felt something stronger than curiosity. He felt concern. Because deep down, he was beginning to realize that the gift Aaliyah wanted most was probably not sitting inside that unopened bag. The special presentation ended with applause and cheerful music, but Benjamin barely noticed any of it. Throughout the remainder of the event, his thoughts kept returning to the little girl sitting beneath the Christmas lights. There was something about Aaliyah that he could not explain. It was not simply that she was alone. Many children experienced difficult circumstances. It was the way she carried herself, the quiet strength, the calm acceptance, the look of someone who had already learned lessons most adults spent a lifetime trying to understand. As the crowd gradually thinned, volunteers began cleaning tables and collecting wrapping paper scattered across the floor. Snow continued falling outside, covering the sidewalks in a fresh blanket of white. Benjamin noticed that Aaliyah was still sitting in the same place. The gift bag remained unopened beside her chair. This time he walked over without hesitation. "Looks like the party is winding down," he said. Aaliyah glanced around the auditorium and nodded. "It usually does." Benjamin sat down again. "You have been here before?" 3 years. Her answer surprised him. 3 years. She nodded. "The Christmas gift drive happens every year." Benjamin smiled. "And every year you sit in the same chair?" A faint smile appeared on her face. "Almost." For the first time he noticed that she seemed more comfortable speaking now. Not because she trusted him completely, but because he had not rushed her. He had not treated her like a charity project. He had simply stayed. A few moments passed as workers folded tables in the background. Then Benjamin asked a question nobody else seemed to have asked all day. "What do you really want for Christmas?" Aaliyah looked down at her gloves. For several seconds she said nothing. Benjamin immediately regretted asking. Then she spoke so quietly that he almost missed it. "Do you want the real answer?" "Yes." She slowly looked up. The Christmas lights reflected softly in her eyes. Most people ask that question because they want to hear about toys. Benjamin remained silent. "I already have toys." Her voice stayed calm. "Not a lot, but enough." She glanced toward the giant Christmas tree. I have clothes too. And books. Benjamin listened carefully. Every word seemed important. Finally, she took a deep breath. What I want is for somebody to stop leaving. The noise of the room seemed to disappear. Benjamin felt something tighten inside his chest. Aaliyah continued, looking toward the lights rather than at him. Every time I start getting comfortable somewhere, things change. Her voice remained steady, but the honesty behind it carried enormous weight. Different house, different room, different people. She shrugged gently, as though describing the weather. After a while, you stop unpacking everything. Benjamin could not immediately find words. The statement felt far too mature for a 10-year-old child. So that is your Christmas wish? He finally asked. Aaliyah nodded. Just one person who stays. Silence settled between them. Outside, snowflakes drifted past the windows. Inside, volunteers continued cleaning while holiday music played softly from distant speakers. Yet in that moment, Benjamin felt as though the entire room had narrowed to a single conversation. Because for the first time all day, he understood why the presents had remained unopened. The thing Aaliyah wanted most could not be wrapped in colorful paper. It could not be purchased in a store. And somehow, her simple answer affected him more deeply than any speech he had heard in years. Aaliyah's words followed Benjamin long after the event ended. That evening, he sat alone in the living room of his penthouse overlooking the Chicago skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a city glowing beneath fresh snow. Christmas lights wrapped around nearby buildings. Traffic moved slowly through illuminated streets. Everything looked beautiful. Yet all Benjamin could think about was a 10-year-old girl sitting quietly beneath a string of lights, wishing for something no store could sell. Just one person who stays. He had attended countless charity events throughout his career. He had funded scholarships, hospitals, youth centers, and community programs. He believed deeply in helping others. But something about this situation felt different. Aaliyah had not asked for money. She had not asked for gifts. She had not even asked for help. She had simply answered a question honestly. The next morning, Benjamin called Rebecca Lawson. "Can we meet?" he asked. An hour later, they sat together in a small office inside the community center. Snow continued falling outside while volunteers prepared for upcoming holiday activities. Rebecca listened as Benjamin explained his concerns. Finally, she nodded. "I was wondering if you would call." Benjamin leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about her." Rebecca smiled sadly. "There is a lot to tell." Over the next hour, Benjamin learned pieces of Aaliyah's story. None of them involved dramatic headlines or shocking events. Instead, it was the story of instability, foster placements that ended unexpectedly, schools that changed too often, friendships that never had enough time to grow, adults who cared but could not stay forever. Through it all, Aaliyah had remained remarkably kind. Teachers described her as thoughtful. Caregivers praised her maturity. Counselors admired her resilience. Yet one pattern appeared again and again. Every time she started building trust, circumstances changed. She stopped expecting permanence, Rebecca explained quietly. That is the hardest part. Benjamin looked through several photographs Rebecca shared. In each image, Aaliyah smiled. Politely. Yet now he recognized what he had seen at the Christmas event. Not sadness. Caution. Hope carefully protected behind experience. What happens now? Benjamin asked. Rebecca sighed. The same thing that usually happens. Christmas passes. Life moves forward. We keep trying to find the right situation. Her answer sounded practical. Reasonable. Yet Benjamin found himself strangely dissatisfied. For the rest of the day, he could not stop thinking about it. That evening, he drove through neighborhoods decorated for the holidays. Families carried shopping bags through brightly lit streets. Children pulled parents toward toy store windows. Everywhere he looked, people were preparing to spend Christmas together. The contrast felt impossible to ignore. Later, he found himself standing in front of a display window featuring a model train circling a miniature Christmas village. He remembered something his wife once told him years earlier. The most meaningful gifts are not the ones people hold in their hands. They are the ones they carry in their hearts. Benjamin stood there for a long moment. Then he looked at his reflection in the glass. For the first time, a question entered his mind that he had never considered before. Not what could he buy for Aaliyah. Not what could he donate. Not what program could he support. The question was much simpler. What if he stopped being a visitor in her story and became part of it? The thought surprised him. It also refused to leave. And as Christmas Eve drew closer, Benjamin began to realize that the little girl he met beneath the holiday lights had changed something inside him that no amount of success ever had. The days leading up to Christmas Eve passed in a way Benjamin had never experienced before. Normally, the final week before Christmas was filled with board meetings, charity appearances, and formal holiday dinners. This year felt different. For the first time in a long while, his attention was not focused on quarterly reports or public obligations. Instead, it kept returning to one small question. What happened to a child after she stopped believing people would stay? Determined to understand more, Benjamin began visiting the community center whenever his schedule allowed. He never announced his visits. He simply appeared quietly, spoke with volunteers, and occasionally spent time with the children. Each visit revealed something new about Aaliyah. She was always reading. If there was a free moment, she had a book in her hands. She helped younger children with puzzles. She thanked volunteers even when they forgot her name. She listened more than she spoke. Yet Benjamin also noticed something else. Whenever conversations became personal, Aaliyah gently changed the subject. It was not avoidance. It was self-protection. One snowy afternoon, Benjamin found her sitting near a window overlooking the playground. A novel rested in her lap while snowflakes drifted across the glass. He sat beside her. "What are you reading?" he asked. Aaliyah showed him the cover. "It is about a girl who goes on adventures." Benjamin smiled. "Does she find what she is looking for?" Aaliyah thought for a moment. "Not right away." "Then why does she keep going?" A faint smile appeared. "Because she still hopes it is out there somewhere." The answer lingered in Benjamin's mind long after the conversation ended. That evening, Rebecca invited him to review several drawings the children had created for a holiday project. Crayon illustrations covered a large table. Some featured toys. Others showed Christmas trees, sleds, and snowmen. Benjamin moved through them casually until one picture caught his attention. It belonged to Aaliyah. Unlike the others, it contained no presents. No decorations. No holiday scenes. Instead, it showed a small house with warm yellow lights glowing through the windows. 3 figures stood together on the front porch beneath a star-filled sky. Benjamin stared at the drawing for several seconds. "Who are they?" he asked quietly. Rebecca glanced down. She never explained. Something about the image felt deeply personal. Not because of what it showed, because of what it revealed. Aaliyah's greatest dream was not excitement, not entertainment, not material things. It was stability, belonging, home. Later that night, Benjamin returned to his penthouse carrying a copy of the drawing Rebecca had given him. The city sparkled beneath Christmas lights. Holiday music drifted from neighboring apartments. Yet he found himself standing in silence near the window, studying the picture. He remembered his own childhood Christmas mornings. The certainty of waking up in the same home. The comfort of familiar faces. The confidence that someone would always be there. Things he had once considered ordinary suddenly seemed extraordinary. For the first time, Benjamin fully understood the life hidden behind Aaliyah's calm smile. Her strength had not come from having everything she needed. It had come from learning how to keep hoping without it. And as Christmas Eve approached, a decision was beginning to form in Benjamin's heart. Not a decision driven by sympathy. Not a decision driven by charity. A decision rooted in something much deeper. Because the more he learned about Aaliyah, the more he realized that helping her might not be the only thing happening. Somehow, without meaning to, she was teaching him what had been missing from his own life all along. Christmas Eve arrived beneath a sky filled with drifting snow and shimmering city lights. Across Chicago, families gathered inside warm homes to exchange gifts, share meals, and celebrate traditions passed down through generations. Yet for Benjamin Carter, this Christmas Eve felt unlike any he had experienced before. He woke before sunrise and stood beside the windows of his penthouse watching snow settle across rooftops and quiet streets. In years past, the holiday often felt like a reminder of what he had lost. This year, for the first time in a long while, it felt like the beginning of something he could not yet fully explain. Over the previous week, Benjamin had spent countless hours speaking with Rebecca, reviewing information, and learning about opportunities to become more involved in Aaliyah's life. Every conversation led him toward the same conclusion. The feeling growing inside him was not temporary. It was not holiday sentiment. It was not guilt. It was something deeper. Every time he imagined Christmas ending and never seeing Aaliyah again, the thought felt wrong. Later that morning he arrived at the community center carrying several carefully wrapped presents. Children filled the building with excitement. Volunteers moved through crowded hallways. Holiday music played softly from speakers. Yet Benjamin's attention immediately searched for one familiar face. He eventually found Aaliyah seated near a window overlooking the snowy parking lot. A book rested in her lap. As always, she appeared content simply observing the world around her. When she noticed Benjamin approaching, a genuine smile appeared. It was small but unmistakably real. "You came back," she said. Benjamin smiled. "I said I would." Aaliyah nodded as though she had been testing whether those words meant anything. The realization touched him more than she knew. They spent most of the afternoon together. They helped younger children decorate cookies. They listened to a local choir perform Christmas songs. They participated in a holiday trivia game that Aaliyah somehow managed to win despite claiming she was not very competitive. For a few hours she looked less like a child carrying invisible disappointments and more like what she truly was. A bright, thoughtful 10-year-old enjoying Christmas. As evening approached, the community center gradually emptied. Children left with foster families, caregivers, and guardians. Volunteers began cleaning decorations and stacking chairs. Aaliyah stood near the entrance preparing to leave with transportation arranged through the foster care program. Snowflakes drifted through the air outside. Benjamin looked at her for a long moment. Then he handed her a small wrapped box. "This one is from me," he said. Aaliyah accepted it carefully. "Can I open it now?" "Of course." She removed the paper slowly. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal. Her fingers traced the cover. "For your stories," Benjamin explained. Aaliyah looked surprised. "How did you know I write stories?" Benjamin smiled. "Because every adventure book you read eventually inspires another one." For several seconds she simply stared at the journal. Then she looked up. "Thank you." Her voice carried genuine emotion. Benjamin hesitated before speaking again. "There is something else I want you to know." Aaliyah listened quietly. "No matter what happens after Christmas, I am not disappearing." The words seemed to catch her completely off guard. Snow drifted between them as holiday lights reflected across the sidewalk. For a moment neither moved. Then Aaliyah held the journal against her chest and nodded. It was only a small gesture. Yet Benjamin recognized something remarkable in her eyes. For the first time since they met, he saw hope beginning to outweigh caution. And standing there beneath the Christmas Eve lights, he realized that the most important decision of his life had already been made. Christmas morning arrived wrapped in fresh snow and golden sunlight. The city seemed quieter than usual, as if the entire world had paused to celebrate. Aaliyah woke early in her foster home and sat upright in bed for several moments, staring at the leather journal resting on her nightstand. She still found herself touching the cover occasionally, almost to confirm it was real. No gift she had received in years had felt so personal. Most presents were chosen for children. This one had been chosen for her. Downstairs, holiday music drifted softly through the house while breakfast was being prepared. Yet even as the day unfolded, her thoughts repeatedly returned to Benjamin's final promise. "No matter what happens after Christmas, I am not disappearing." The words felt comforting. They also felt dangerous. Experience had taught her that hope could be fragile. Throughout the morning she reminded herself not to expect too much. But for the first time in a very long while, that proved difficult. Meanwhile, across the city, Benjamin stood in his penthouse reviewing a folder resting on his dining table. Several documents lay neatly organized beside a cup of untouched coffee. Over the previous days he had spoken with attorneys, child welfare professionals, and Rebecca. Every conversation had led him further toward the decision he already knew he wanted to make. Looking at the paperwork now, he felt something unusual. Not uncertainty. Not fear. Peace. Shortly after noon, Aaliyah received an unexpected phone call. One of the program coordinators. informed her that someone wanted to see her. Assuming it was another holiday volunteer, she bundled into her winter coat and followed the coordinator outside. Snow sparkled beneath the afternoon sun. Waiting at the curb stood a familiar black SUV. Her eyes widened immediately. Benjamin stepped out and smiled. "Merry Christmas." Aaliyah smiled back. "Merry Christmas. Would you like to spend the afternoon with me?" For a moment she simply stared. Then she nodded. The drive across the city felt surprisingly easy. They talked about books, favorite Christmas movies, and ridiculous holiday songs that somehow became popular every year. By the time they arrived at Benjamin's penthouse, Aaliyah felt more relaxed than she expected. The apartment overlooked Lake Michigan, where sunlight danced across snow-covered shorelines. Christmas decorations filled the space with warmth. A large tree stood beside the windows. Stockings hung near the fireplace. Yet what captured her attention most was not the luxury. It was the feeling. The home felt lived in, loved, real. During lunch, they shared stories about favorite memories. Later, Benjamin showed her a small reading room lined with shelves of books. Aaliyah's eyes grew wide. "You have all of these?" Benjamin laughed. "Probably too many." She slowly walked through the room, running her fingers along the spines. It felt like discovering a treasure chest. As evening approached, snow began falling again outside the windows. The city lights gradually illuminated the skyline. Aaliyah stood near the glass admiring the view when Benjamin joined her. For several moments neither spoke. Then Benjamin took a slow breath. "There is something important I want to tell you." Aaliyah turned toward him. His expression was calm but serious. "Everything I said yesterday was true," he began. "I am not disappearing." Her heart began beating faster. Benjamin smiled gently. "In fact, I have already started taking steps to make sure I can be part of your life for a very long time." For a moment, Aaliyah could not find words. Outside, snowflakes drifted through the Chicago night. Inside, beneath the glow of Christmas lights, something extraordinary was beginning to feel possible. The days after Christmas passed with a quiet sense of anticipation. For Aaliyah, life continued much as it always had on the surface. She attended school, completed assignments, and spent afternoons reading or writing in the journal Benjamin had given her. Yet something inside her had changed. For the first time in years, she found herself looking forward to the future instead of preparing for disappointment. Benjamin kept his promise. He called regularly. He attended school events when his schedule allowed. He listened to her stories about books, teachers, and dreams for the future. Most importantly, he remained present. Weeks passed, then months. And every time Aaliyah expected the connection to fade, it grew stronger instead. One afternoon in early spring, Rebecca invited Aaliyah to visit the community center after school. The request seemed ordinary enough. The center frequently hosted events and educational programs. Aaliyah assumed this would be no different. When she arrived, however, she immediately noticed something unusual. The main gathering room had been decorated with fresh flowers. Volunteers she recognized smiled warmly as she entered. Several people she knew from previous visits stood quietly near the walls. In the center of the room stood Benjamin. Aaliyah slowed to a stop. "What is happening?" she asked softly. Benjamin smiled. "Come sit with me." Confused but curious, she joined him at a small table near the windows. Sunlight streamed through the glass, illuminating the room with a warm glow. For a moment neither spoke. Then Benjamin carefully placed a folder on the table. Aaliyah immediately recognized the seriousness in his expression. Her heart began beating faster. "Over the past several months," Benjamin began, "I have spent a lot of time thinking about what matters most." Aaliyah listened quietly. "When we first met, you told me your Christmas wish was for somebody to stay." The room seemed to grow very still. Benjamin continued. "At first, I thought I wanted to help you. But somewhere along the way, I realized something important." His smile softened. "You were helping me too." Aaliyah felt emotion rising in her chest. Benjamin opened the folder. "For a long time after my wife passed away, I stopped believing my life could grow in new ways. Then I met a remarkable young lady who reminded me that hope is not something you lose. It is something you choose." Several volunteers quietly wiped away tears. Rebecca smiled from across the room. Benjamin looked directly at Aaliyah. I have officially begun the process of becoming your permanent guardian, if that is something you would want too. For a moment Aaliyah simply stared at him. The words felt too large to understand all at once.
Permanent.
Guardian. Want to. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. Not because she was sad. Because after years of protecting herself from hope, she suddenly found herself standing in front of it. You mean? Her voice trembled slightly. Benjamin nodded. I mean, I would like us to become a family. Silence filled the room. Then Aaliyah did something she rarely allowed herself to do. She stopped worrying about what might happen tomorrow. She stopped wondering whether things would change. She stopped preparing for goodbye. Instead she smiled. A real smile. The kind that reached her eyes and transformed her entire face. Then she wrapped her arms around Benjamin. Applause erupted throughout the room. Yet neither of them seemed to notice. Because in that moment, the greatest gift was not a document, a promise, or even a future plan. It was the realization that neither of them would have to face the future alone. 1 year later, Christmas returned to Chicago with the same sparkling lights, snow-covered streets, and holiday music drifting through crowded storefronts. Yet for Benjamin Carter and Aaliyah Brooks, everything felt different. The season no longer carried uncertainty. It carried memories. New traditions had taken root over the past year. Saturday breakfasts filled with conversation. Evenings spent reading in the library. School projects spread across the dining room table. Long walks beside Lake Michigan where they talked about dreams, books, and plans for the future. The legal process had taken time, patience, and countless meetings, but in the end the result was exactly what both had hoped for. They had become a family. On Christmas Eve their home glowed with warmth. A large tree stood beside the windows overlooking the city skyline. Decorations collected throughout the year filled every room with personality and meaning. Some ornaments had come from expensive stores. Others had been handmade by Aaliyah. Benjamin's favorite was a small paper star she created during a school art project. It hung near the center of the tree. Every time he looked at it, he smiled. That evening, Rebecca joined them for dinner. The woman who had witnessed the beginning of their journey now sat at the same table watching its beautiful continuation. Laughter filled the room as stories were shared and memories revisited. At one point, Rebecca looked around the dining room and shook her head with a smile. Do you realize none of this would have happened if one little girl had opened her present immediately? Aaliyah laughed. Benjamin smiled. I am very glad she did not. Later, after dinner ended and Rebecca returned home, Aaliyah sat near the fireplace writing in the leather journal she had received exactly 1 year earlier. The pages were now filled with stories, ideas, dreams, and memories. Benjamin settled into a chair nearby with a book. For several minutes neither spoke. The silence felt comfortable. Familiar. Like home. Finally, Aaliyah looked up from the journal. Can I show you something? Benjamin nodded. She walked over and handed him the notebook. A page near the back had been carefully illustrated. Benjamin immediately recognized the drawing. It showed a house with warm lights glowing through the windows. 3 figures stood together beneath a star-filled sky. The same picture she had once drawn months before. But this version was different. More detailed. More alive. Benjamin studied it quietly. It is beautiful. Aaliyah smiled. Look at the bottom. He lowered his eyes. Beneath the drawing she had written a single sentence. I found what I was looking for. For several seconds Benjamin could not speak. Emotion rose unexpectedly in his chest. He remembered the little girl sitting alone beneath Christmas lights. The child who believed hope was something that disappeared. The child who wished for one person to stay. Now she stood before him smiling with a confidence he had never seen before. Benjamin closed the journal gently and handed it back. You know something, he said. Aaliyah tilted her head. What? He smiled warmly. So did I. Outside, snowflakes drifted through the night while Christmas lights shimmered across the city. Inside, a father and daughter stood beside a glowing tree surrounded by love, belonging, and the simple miracle of finding family when neither expected it. And as midnight approached, both understood the truth that had changed their lives forever. The greatest gifts are never the ones waiting beneath the tree. They are the people who choose to stay long after the holiday lights fade.